Hello friends, welcome back to HeartScapes, where we're learning the system of Reiki to be rooted, to be spacious, to be connected, and to remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio. I'm really glad to have you here. So, Reiki. What even is Reiki? Sometimes I realize that, I talk all day long about Reiki, but I so rarely just pause and define what this even is. Today, I wanted to share a little bit about some of the ways in which I want to invite you into engaging with the system of Reiki. And so I should probably start by saying what it is. So Reiki, we can think about in two ways. One, we can think about as a phenomenon in the world. The word Reiki is Japanese for spiritual energy, and it describes the energy that is life in the world, that animates us, that connects us, that allows for our consciousness and for our awareness of the world around us. It, in a certain sense, is part and parcel of who and what we are as a living being of this world. And we can also use the word Reiki to refer to a system of practice. A system of practice developed in Japan in the late 1800s, early 1900s by a man named Mikao Usui as part of a widespread kind of spiritual revolution happening in Japan at the time. One of many regional forms of practice that melded the indigenous Shinto practices, the esoteric Buddhist practices that had been in the country for a long time, spiritual practices from the West that were coming into the country at that time, and the personal experiences and lifetimes of the people who developed these systems. And this particular system of practice that we call the system of Reiki traveled out of Japan through an interesting set of circumstances and ended up in the West and ultimately in our hands. It changed forms many times along the way. Truly completely different systems of practice coming into being by blending this system with other systems in the United States and other Western places. And so here at HeartScapes, we really endeavor to remember and relearn and connect with the original Japanese form of the system of Reiki, and to really learn what this system was developed for, what the elements mean, how they all come together in a practice that allows us to remember the wholeness of our true self, to experience our lives unattached to fear and to anger, rooted in gratitude, able to be true to ourselves and to be compassionate to ourselves and to others, to essentially walk through the world in an enlightened form in a certain sense. And so in this system, healing is really defined in those ways as remembering the wholeness of our true self and walking through the world in these ways. It's an incredibly powerful system of practice in our modern day, where there is so much that is provoking fear and anger inside of us, challenging us to be, disconnected from each other, from ourselves, from the world. It can be difficult to find things to focus our gratitude on when we're so distracted by all of the new things that are being thrown at us. And to root into a deep sense of compassion for ourselves and others can be a serious challenge. And so here at HeartScapes, we are learning this system to improve our day-to-day life, to become more of who we are and more connected to each other and to the web of life. We do that through a variety of ways, one of which is this YouTube channel, where we get to have bite-sized conversations about these topics, looking at those original forms, those original concepts, and figuring out what that means in our daily life now, how to apply these practices and concepts in our day-to-day in ways that are very powerful. The other way that we do that is through the HeartScapes Reiki Academy, where we provide a comprehensive Reiki education that is embodied, that is trauma-informed, and that is rooted in the Japanese origins of this system. And we are about to open enrollment for our next Reiki I class. And so I just wanted to share a little bit with you about what that class is, what it includes, the experience that we like to facilitate through that class, the structure that we use, the values that form the container of all of that, and how this class connects to the year-long Reiki program that provides a much deeper dive into the full system. So let's sit down and talk about that a little bit. So the system of Reiki is often taught in 3 levels. Shoden Reiki I, the first teachings, Okuden, the inner teachings, and Shimpiden, the mystery teachings. Truly, this is a continuum of learning. It's not that each of these is, totally separate from the others. It's really a continuum of learning across our experience. But for convenience, they get divided up in these ways. Shoden Reiki I, it is the introduction to the system, but it is also a complete learning and practice experience in and of itself. You can take Shoden Reiki I and develop a robust, satisfying, incredibly beneficial Reiki practice for yourself and for others in your life to last your whole life long. So it's not that we have to be focused on getting to the end. It's not a race to get to the end of Reiki 3. Each of these classes, each of these experiences is a complete and robust experience in and of itself. Some people take Shoden Reiki 1 and ride that out for the rest of their lives and are greatly served by it. And so we really love to give this class a really powerful and attentive container to really set the stage for that kind of lifelong practice. So the elements that are taught in this class, there's 3 main categories. Firstly, we introduce and work with and begin to integrate all 5 elements of the system of Reiki. That first element is breathing meditation. So the foundation of this practice is a breathing practice that really helps us to align our body, our breath, and our attention, where we are focusing our mind. In fact, I would say that all of the practices in the system of Reiki do just that, bring alignment to those 3 aspects of ourselves for the purpose of drawing our attention to our own wholeness and healing. And this foundational set of breathing practices really sets the stage for that. It's the foundation of everything else that we do in the system. We return to them again and again. From there, we work with the precepts, the 5 precepts or principles of the system of Reiki. These are really describing not only what we endeavor towards, the goals that we might have, but they describe the outcomes that we can expect to experience in our lives when we practice the system of Reiki. And that is to live our lives unattached to fear and to anger, to live our lives rooted in gratitude, to be able to live true to ourselves, to our way and to our being, and to feel deep, abiding compassion for ourselves and for other people, even in all of the difficulties and challenges and mistakes and failings of our life, all of the beauty and joy and miraculous moments of our life, to be rooted, all of that in compassion. So those 5 precepts of the system of Reiki, again, truly are, in essence, describing the whole system. They're describing the purpose and the outcome of working with the system of Reiki. And in order to work with those precepts, we again engage those breathing practices. We use contemplation practices that emphasize the mind to work through those precepts. We use self-reflective practices to observe how those precepts show up in our life, where we might be struggling with them, where they might come to us easily, where we might use them to shift a challenging situation or rest our attention on a moment of beauty. It really is the center point and the foundation of the whole practice. The third element of the system of Reiki is symbols and mantras. And oftentimes within kind of Western forms of Reiki, the symbols and mantras are introduced in level 2, Okuden, the second level. And we certainly do that. We introduce the 3 main symbols and mantras in Reiki level 2. However, we do still work with symbol and mantra in Reiki 1. The symbol that we focus our attention on in Reiki 1 is the written word in kanji form of the word Reiki itself. The pictorial language of kanji gives us this really amazing opportunity to work with our imagination, to work with communication across time and space, because a pictorial language is just that. It's giving us an image that somebody designed to express an experience that they had, or a set of experiences or concepts. And so there's great value in working with that kanji, working with the word Reiki itself, using our imagination, using our analytical skills, using the sensations in our body, and really just seeing what comes forward for each of us in our imagination as we work with this pictorial language. It's a really fun process. The mantra that we focus on, because voice and mantra and chanting and using the vibration of the voice and using the expressive qualities of the voice is an incredibly important aspect of the system of Reiki traditionally. In Japan, in a widespread way, chanting and mantra and voice is incredibly important for spiritual practice. And so it's no different here inside of this practice. In Reiki I, the mantra that we work with primarily is the precepts themselves, reciting them in their original Japanese form, reciting them simply as a recitation, as a rhythmic mantra, as a chant, and allowing the sounds and the physical sensation of the vibration of those words in their original form to work on us, to work on our body, on our psyche, on our imagination, on the sensations that we have when we are in practice. It's a really lovely way to work with the precepts. The fourth element of the system of Reiki is Tenohira, or palm healing. And this is the practice that in the West is most closely associated with the system of Reiki. If you've heard of the system of Reiki, or for most people who have encountered it in some way, oftentimes it's thought of as a hands-on healing modality, and that the primary center point of the system is a series of hand positions that one enacts on themselves or another person to bring about a healing response. And that is certainly one aspect of this system, but it's just one of many. And the purpose of Tenohira in the original Japanese form is that of a body-based meditation. Again, a way to help us focus our mind on the present moment, on the wholeness of our true self, and to be with another person if we're choosing to share Tenohira with another person, to be with that other person from that perspective of our whole self. That when we are with another person in a Tenohira practice, perhaps using gentle touch or just close proximity with no touch, that we are in a practice of connection, of remembering our wholeness and remembering our inherent interconnection with each other and with the world. And that in doing so, a healing response is generated inside of each of us. So Tenohira. In Shoden, we learn the traditional 22 hand placements that have been used for a very long time within the system of Reiki, and we learn ways to work intuitively with Tenohira beyond those hand placements. The emphasis is on self-practice and on sharing with friends and family as part of one's practice. And finally, the fifth element of the system of Reiki is Reiju, or spiritual blessing. And this is a ritual enacted amongst a learning community between teacher and student, between co-learners together, that has a number of different functions. But in essence, the two that are most important to share in this moment is that firstly, it's a ritual of stepping into practice together, of agreeing to be in the practice together, to opening ourselves to what we most need in that moment for each of our learning journey, and to doing that in community. And secondly, it is an opportunity to focus our full attention on the question of what does it mean to remember the wholeness of my true self, to have an initial experience of that true self in this ritual structure. Every time we return to that structure, again, having an initial experience because we are different and the moment is different. It's a really lovely ritual that we share in all of the classes. And in Reiki I and Reiki II, the primary way is simply by experiencing that ritual, by receiving it. In Reiki III, you learn how to enact that ritual yourself. And so those are the 5 elements of the system of Reiki that we work through and the way that we focus on them in Shoden. And then those are supported by other foundational concepts from the spiritual traditions that form the system of Reiki, primarily indigenous Shinto practice, esoteric Buddhism, and the mountain forms of shamanic Buddhism known as Shugendo. And just as two examples, two really foundational, fundamental principles that we work with extensively throughout the whole experience is the concept of the three diamonds. This is the three energy centers that are that form the energy map that we work with in Japanese practice: the belly, the head, and the heart. We work with those in a lot of different ways, and that really forms the foundation of how we focus our practice. Secondly, the concept of Sanmitsu, or the three mysteries of body, breath, and mind. I've already referenced this a little bit, that these practices are designed to bring those three aspects of ourselves, those three mysteries, the three mysterious ways in which we as humans perceive the world and ourselves, to bring those together in a unified whole so that we can bring the wholeness and the fullness of who we are to our practice and to our life. A great mentor of mine, Norma Wong, often said that the body, the mind, and the spirit are hardwired together, and to behave as if they are not is to greatly reduce our capacity. And I have found that to be true in our life, and I have found that the system of Reiki is a brilliant way to refocus our attention on the ways in which our whole self is hardwired together. So those are just two very important foundational concepts that we weave into learning the 5 elements of the system, and there are many others. And finally, of course, we work with a brief history and cultural context of the system of Reiki. And by brief, I mean in terms of explicitly sitting down and kind of having a history lesson around this, which I am a history major going back to my collegiate career. And so I absolutely geek out on the history and the cultural context of all of these things. But we keep it as brief as we can. However, historical and culturally relevant points about the system are, of course, threaded throughout the entire class, the entire experience, because that's how we understand the context for things and why certain elements are there and what things mean and how do we interpret them. And then how do we interpret them across cultures into our own lives here and now. So we certainly work with that context. So that's an overview of what we dig into in Shoden Reiki I, the first teachings. And now just a few words about how we go about teaching that. Last year, we switched the structure of our classes over from the weekend model that is pretty commonly used for teaching Reiki to an 8-week class model for Reiki I and Reiki II and 12 weeks for Reiki III. And we did that for a variety of reasons, primarily because we recognized that integrating this whole system of practice, what I just spent the last, 10 minutes or more going over was, just a surface overview of a system that has quite a bit of depth. Many, many elements, many things that we learn, many practices that we engage with. And we acknowledge that it takes time to integrate all of that, not only just into our knowledge, right, to actually have retained the knowledge of it, but to actually integrate it into our life. It's extremely important to us that this experience is not just something that you do on a weekend. Maybe you have a cool experience, maybe you pick up a few interesting tidbits and then you move on and don't actually bring it into application in your daily life. Perhaps it's something that goes up on your shelf and you pull it down from time to time to share it with another person or weave it into your work in some way. No, rather than that, we want people who really want to integrate this into your day-to-day life, who recognize that it is incredibly important for us to have a practice structure, a spiritual structure that helps us to navigate the wide range of feelings, thoughts, and experiences, challenges, and joys that we encounter every single day in our lives, and to be able to reach for that practice in any given moment to help us navigate all of that with confidence, with resilience, with lots of resources, and with joy. And so we give you lots of space, lots of time to work with this material, and assignments in between classes that help you to do that, to really give you a nice firm enough structure to bring it into your life that is also flexible enough to make it your own. The way in which people participate is a hybrid form. So you can either join us here in the studio if you happen to be local to Davis, California, or you can join online. And we've really worked out ways to make that a robust and valuable experience either way, however it is that you decide to come. And in all cases, our classes are offered in a way that's very much embodiment-based and experiential. We really want you to be able to take in these experiences both in the moment in class and, again, of course, as you leave class. And so our teaching style is very much rooted in having direct experiences and processing through what those experiences mean alongside a good deal of learning. So that's a little bit about the container, how we teach the class. There's a lot more that could be said about that, but I think those are the essential points. So finally, the last thing that I want to share is a little bit about the values that hold all of this together. Because truly, what it is we value is going to dictate what we pay attention to and what we bring forward. And having shared values between a teaching space and a group of learners amongst the learners themselves is a really powerful element for creating a strong container for transformative experience and transformative learning. And so there are many values that each of us carry, but there are 3 in particular that I want to emphasize for our time. Well, maybe 4, for how we can understand these classes. So the first is that we value practicing the system of Reiki first and foremost as a self-development and a self-healing practice. When I first learned Reiki from its Western form, I was very much focused on the external aspects of it, of healing for other people, of serving other people, of integrating it into my work. It was very much externally focused. It was about doing things for and with other people. But what I've come to understand is that that's, number one, not historically accurate as to the purpose of this practice. And it's less effective when we talk about wanting to have something that truly makes change over our life. And so from its origins, Reiki is first and foremost a self-practice. It's about remembering the wholeness of our true self, walking through this world in the ways described by the precepts so that we can be in our fullness. We can be our most resilient, most resourced, most brilliant and joyful selves. And in doing so, that healing expands from the inside out to include other people. Because we remember the foundation of the precepts is compassion for ourselves and for others. And so as we work our practice internally for ourselves, for and with our own direct experience, we're also expanding that practice outward. We're emphasizing connection with others. And it's through that process, the inside out process, that Reiki is shared with others and benefits others. And so it's a mindset shift, almost in an opposite direction from how I originally learned to how I'm now learning and teaching this system. And it has made a tremendous difference in my life and the lives of my students. So that's the first value that we emphasize. Secondly, as I've already said a number of times, we value teaching this process from the perspective of its Japanese origins. Firstly, I just find that that's in the best integrity. As a white Western woman teaching this practice 100+ years after it was developed in a totally different time and place, I feel that it's really in the best interests of my own integrity for my practice and my business to, as well as I can, which is not perfectly, but as well as I can, be enmeshed in this practice from the perspective of its origins. Not only is that more respectful and in more integrity with the practice, but it also helps me to understand it in a way that helps it to be more directly applicable to my life. That might seem paradoxical, but the more that I was able to understand Reiki for what it truly is, the easier I could see the parallels between the system of Reiki and other systems of practice and systems of thought that are connected with my own ethnic and spiritual backgrounds. And by understanding those things, in a more clean and clear way from their origins, the connections between them become clean and become more powerful. It becomes a more effective and more elegant way to dive into the practice, I have found. And I've also found it to be more effective in my life. Third, we take what I will call a social change lens to the work that we do. I came to this work after a whole career of a dozen years doing social justice leadership development work. And again, focused on that external doing aspect of that work, and really at a certain point wanting to come home to the internal work, the internal side of things, and really recognizing that change, whether it's change in our own life and our communities and the world, whether it's leadership, whether it's teaching, creativity, that these things can best and most lasting be enacted from the inside out. And so whether or not a person identifies as someone who focuses on social change or social justice, we all have things that we care about. We all have ways in which we see the world and want to make improvements in our lives and the lives of other people, that we want to have a positive impact on ourselves, our families, our communities, and the world at whatever scale is appropriate for us. All of us have the capacity to make change. All of us are leaders in our spheres of influence, whether or not we see ourselves that way, whether or not we have that positional authority that we think of when we think of leadership. All of us have spheres of influence. We all move through the world in ways that either make it better or make it more challenging. We all have influence. And so while we don't necessarily explicitly always focus on social change, it's part of the values and part of the backdrop that we hold here. Again, just affirming everybody who comes through here as somebody who is empowered to make change in their life and in their spheres of influence. So we affirm that, we acknowledge it, we talk about it when it feels, relevant and alive in a given cohort or given conversation. And it's just something that feels important to me to keep front of mind from my perspective as a teacher, and to invite all of you into whenever we can. Alongside of that, our work is trauma informed as well as we can be, as much as we can be. This is an element, a part of teaching and facilitating that we as a culture are learning more and more about over time. And it's something that is incredibly important to me, that when we're creating spaces of healing and connection, that we understand practices and protocols that we can use to reduce the possibility of causing harm or unintentional challenges for folks. So we have classes explicit about how to make a trauma-informed Reiki practice, and as well as we guide our classes in that way. Okay, I think that gets to the end of what I wanted to share about the structures of these classes. That was a longer piece of conversation that I had intended for this video. If you're still here with me at the end, thank you for sticking it out. I hope that was helpful for you. I do want to say, lastly, I mentioned that this class can be part of our year program. So we offer the ability to take this class as a standalone class, just dropping into Reiki I to the cohort and having it as a standalone experience, or as the first class of our year-long program. I made another video going into depth about that year-long program. I'll link it down below. But the foundation of it is walking through all three of those levels with a lot of other forms of support along the way. And if you're either don't want to commit to such a long container, or you want to try it out, you want to just have an experience with us before committing to that long journey, you're welcome to take Shoden and then decide by the end of class if you want to continue along with us. For those who want to just take Okuden or just take Shimpiden, Reikis 2 or 3, I work those out on a one-on-one basis. We keep those classes closed to your cohort, but for people who want to study with us in just one or both of those classes, outside of the year program. We just schedule it with you as a one-on-one or as a small group if there's several folks who want to do it at that same time. So reach out about that if you want to explore that option. All right, friends, thank you so much for hanging with me. I would love to see you in a future class. If you have questions, please feel free to either drop them down below, or you can reach out to me by email or by phone. We can schedule a time to chat. I'll put that scheduling link down below as well. And however you choose to journey with us, even if it's just through this one video, however you step out into your life from here and journey throughout your day, may you be deeply provisioned for it. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Until next time, I love you. Goodbye.